comes a moment in every man's life where he has to step back, look at the way he's been behaving, and ask himself a hard question. Was I giving energy to a woman who didn't respect me? It's not an easy truth to face, but it's one every high-value man eventually confronts. Because the biggest mistake men make isn't falling in love, wanting connection, or giving effort. The real mistake is giving effort to someone who never appreciated it. The real mistake is offering loyalty to someone who took you for granted. The real mistake is pouring attention into someone who believed she was entitled to it. The modern dating world is full of men who are losing themselves trying to impress women who don't even care. Men who rearrange their schedules for a woman who won't even text back. Men who explain themselves to someone who won't listen. Men who stay loyal to someone who isn't loyal to them. Men who give validation to someone who disrespects them publicly, privately, emotionally, or mentally. Men who act like a boyfriend to someone who treats them like a backup plan. But here's the truth. No one teaches men a woman who doesn't respect you will never value your effort. And a woman who doesn't value your effort will never feel attracted to you. Respect is the foundation of desire, and the moment she stops respecting you, everything else collapses. A high-value man knows this. A high-value man protects his attention like a currency. A high-value man does not beg for respect, he requires it. He understands that giving more to a woman who gives less only destroys his self-worth. And this is where things change for you. Because the second you stop overgiving, something powerful happens. You stop chasing. You stop proving yourself. You stop bending to her attitude, her silence, her inconsistency, her coldness. You stop acting like she's the prize. And in that instant, everything shifts in your favor. Because when you stop doing too much for a woman who respects you too little, you reclaim the emotional power you didn't know you were giving away. You begin to see clearly. You begin to feel stronger. You begin to act with purpose instead of desperation. And suddenly, the same woman who treated you like an option starts wondering why your energy feels different, colder, calmer, more disciplined, more selective. Women notice everything. When a man's energy drops from willing to do anything for you to willing to do nothing for disrespect, they feel it instantly. They feel the loss of your attention. They feel the absence of your reassurance. They feel the shift in your tone, and they feel the silence where your effort used to live. And that is when she realizes something she never expected. You stop treating her like a priority because she never earned the right to be one. Because a woman's respect is the gateway to her loyalty, her effort, her softness, her desire. And a man who gives these things away without receiving respect in return isn't being loving. He's being lost. This video and this script is where you stop being lost and start being a man with rules, standards, discipline, and value that cannot be ignored. Before we start, a quick reminder. The real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course, it's a brotherhood, a private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month, you join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits, just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below, join the community. Enroll once, grow forever. Let's dive in. Section 1. The truth about why women lose respect for men who overgive. Every man who's been hurt, overlooked, or taken for granted eventually discovers this harsh truth. Women don't lose respect for men because they're kind. They lose respect for men who abandon themselves to get approval. A woman will never respect a man who treats her like a queen while she treats him like a placeholder. She will never respect a man who invests more into her than he does into himself. She will never respect a man who rewards her coldness with warmth, her silence with effort, her inconsistency with loyalty. And the tragic part is that most men are doing these things without even realizing they're sabotaging themselves. The reason women lose respect for overgiving men is rooted in psychology, not emotion. Women are wired to test, to observe, to evaluate a man's strength through his boundaries. When you overgive, you communicate without words that your boundaries are weak. You communicate that your standards are negotiable. You communicate that you need her approval more than your own dignity. And that's the exact moment her attraction begins to fade. To a woman, a man who overgives looks desperate. And desperation is the opposite of desire. It's not the gifts, the effort, or the affection that turn her off. It's the imbalance. It's the fact that you're giving 80% while she's giving 20%. It's the fact that you're trying to earn a position in her life she hasn't offered. It's the fact that you chase instead of choosing. Women may never say it out loud, but they feel it instantly. A man who overgives is a man who doesn't value himself. And this is where the respect breaks. She sees you rearranging your schedule for her. She sees you waiting for her replies like your world depends on it. She sees you overinvesting in conversations she barely participates in. She sees you apologizing for things you didn't do wrong just to keep the peace. She sees you lowering your standards because she's attractive. She sees you shrinking your identity for a woman who doesn't even lift a finger for you. But here's the psychological twist. The more she ignores your effort, the more effort you give, and the more she resents it. She begins associating your kindness with weakness. She begins associating your loyalty with lack of options. She begins associating your availability with emotional neediness. And every time you reward her disrespect with patience, her respect for you drops another level. Women don't lose respect for strength. They lose it for surrender. They lose it for the man who surrenders his purpose for a woman who hasn't earned a place in his life. They lose it for the man who surrenders his identity for the hope of attention. They lose it for the man who surrenders his standards because he's afraid to lose her. But the irony is brutal. You lose her anyway, because the moment she stops respecting you, she stops valuing you. And that is why high-value men live differently. Because they don't overgive. They don't chase. They don't beg for interest. They don't reward disrespect. They operate from principle, not emotion. And when a man learns that, everything about how women treat him changes forever. Section 2. The hidden cost of doing too much for the wrong woman. Every man thinks the cost of overgiving is just emotional exhaustion. But the truth is far deeper, heavier, and more damaging than most men realize. When you give too much to a woman who doesn't respect you, the real price you pay is not the energy you lose. It's the identity you slowly destroy. You begin shaping yourself around her comfort instead of your mission. You begin shrinking your universe to fit inside her opinions. You begin adjusting your standards to match her lack of effort. And the man you were meant to become gets buried under the man you think she wants. The first hidden cost is self-betrayal. This is the moment you start ignoring your own needs just to satisfy hers. You stop speaking your truth to avoid conflict. You stop enforcing boundaries to avoid losing her. You stop walking with confidence because you're too busy tiptoeing around her mood. You stop being a man with direction because you're too focused on being a man who doesn't upset her. The tragedy comes when you wake up one day and realize you're not yourself anymore. You're a softened version of a man she doesn't even respect. Then comes the cost of emotional imbalance. When you do too much for a woman who gives too little, you create a dynamic where you feel responsible for maintaining the connection. You carry all the weight. You initiate every conversation. You plan every date. You fix every problem. You offer every reassurance. And she becomes emotionally passive because she knows you will always overcompensate. This imbalance drains your masculine energy, leaving you tired, frustrated, and resentful while she feels nothing at all. Another hidden cost is loss of attraction. Not her attraction to you, but your attraction to yourself. You start feeling weak for caring too much. You feel embarrassed for trying so hard. You feel ashamed for accepting crumbs, and deep down you know you deserve better, but you continue giving because you're afraid to lose even the small attention she offers. This internal contradiction eats away at your confidence until you begin doubting your own worth. The next cost is opportunity loss. The loss of your time, your growth, your potential, and your peace. While you spend hours waiting for her reply, someone else is building a business. While you're thinking about what to text her, another man is focused on his mission. While you're chasing a woman who doesn't respect you, you're ignoring your purpose, your goals, your health, and your future. You sacrifice your progress for someone who wouldn't sacrifice 5 minutes for you. There is also the cost of emotional dependency. The more you do for her, the more you need her validation. The more you give, the more you fear losing access to her. The more you invest, the more you worry about outcomes you cannot control. You begin tying your self-worth to whether she responds, whether she compliments you, whether she appreciates you, and that dependency destroys your strength because your emotions are now in someone else's hands. But the deepest cost of all is the loss of masculine authority. When you overgive, you stop being the leader of your own life. You become reactive instead of proactive. You become emotionally sensitive instead of emotionally grounded. You become driven by fear instead of guided by purpose. A man who gives too much to a woman who doesn't respect him slowly loses his edge, his power, his direction, his fire, and once a man loses that, everything else crumbles. This is why the high-value man never overgives. He never loses himself trying to keep a woman who doesn't respect him. He knows the cost is too high and the reward is non-existent, because doing too much for the wrong woman never wins her heart. It only loses your own. Section 3. The signs she doesn't respect you and how you keep ignoring them. Every man who has ever been disrespected by a woman saw the signs long before the damage was done, but he ignored them because he hoped she would change. He convinced himself her distance was temporary, her coldness was stress, her attitude was just a phase. He didn't want to accept the truth because accepting it meant facing the painful reality that he was giving his heart to someone who didn't see his value. But once a woman loses respect, her behavior changes in ways that are unmistakable to anyone except the man she's doing it to. The first sign she doesn't respect you is emotional laziness. When a woman respects you, she reciprocates, she invests, she asks questions, she shows interest, she makes time. But when she doesn't respect you, she does the bare minimum. Her replies become short, her tone becomes cold, her presence becomes inconsistent. She doesn't initiate, she doesn't care, she knows you'll keep trying, so she gives nothing. This emotional laziness is not confusion, it's a message you're not worth the effort. Another sign is dismissiveness. She interrupts you, she laughs at your opinions, she talks over you, she downplays your achievements. She treats your feelings like they're irrational or unimportant. A woman who respects you values your voice, your perspective, and your emotional truth. A woman who doesn't respect you treats you like background noise, and yet men keep explaining themselves to a woman who has already decided not to listen. The next sign is inconsistency, a pattern that men often mistake for confusion or immaturity. One day she's warm, the next day she's distant. One week she's calling you every night, the next week you're lucky if you get a text. She gives you just enough affection to keep you around, but never enough stability to feel secure. This inconsistency is not accidental. It is the emotional behavior of a woman who doesn't prioritize you, but doesn't want to lose your availability either. Another sign she doesn't respect you is entitlement. She expects your effort. She expects your attention. She expects your loyalty. But she doesn't give any of those things back. She wants you to go all in while she barely shows up. This imbalance reveals everything. She sees you as a man she can take from, not a man she must invest in. When she respects you, she feels lucky to have your attention. When she doesn't, she acts like she deserves it automatically. Then there is the sign men fear acknowledging the most. She tests you constantly, not because she's playful or curious, but because she senses weakness. She pushes your boundaries to see if you'll fold. She disrespects you subtly to see if you'll correct her. She ignores you to see if you'll chase. When a woman respects a man, she doesn't test him out of insecurity. She trusts him. When she doesn't respect him, she tests him to confirm what she already suspects, that he will tolerate anything just to keep her. The most painful sign of all is lack of admiration. She doesn't look at you with pride. She doesn't speak highly of you. She doesn't value your masculine qualities. A woman who respects you admires you emotionally, mentally, physically. She sees strength in you. She feels safe around you. She appreciates your presence. But a woman who doesn't respect you sees you as an option, not a man. And yet the biggest problem is not the signs themselves. It's the fact that you kept ignoring them. You kept giving, hoping things would improve. You kept trying to earn what she refused to give. You kept convincing yourself she just needed more time. But a woman who doesn't respect you will never magically start doing so. Respect is not built through overgiving. It's built through boundaries, discipline, and walking away from disrespect the first time it shows up. Section 4. Why setting boundaries instantly changes how she treats you. A woman's respect for a man is never based on how much he gives. It is based on how clearly he defines what he will not tolerate. Most men think being generous, patient, and forgiving will make a woman appreciate them more, but in reality, the opposite is true. A woman only respects a man when he shows her consistently and unapologetically that his boundaries matter more than her beauty, her attitude, or her temporary attention. Because the moment you enforce your standards, the entire dynamic shifts from her controlling your emotions to you controlling the direction of the connection. The first reason boundaries change how she treats you is because they reveal your internal strength. A man without boundaries is a man without a backbone. He accepts excuses, overlooks disrespect, tolerates inconsistency, and hopes effort will fix everything. But a man with boundaries communicates something much more powerful, that he values his peace more than her presence, his mission more than her moods, and his dignity more than her validation. This inner strength is the foundation of masculine attractiveness, and she feels it immediately. The second reason boundaries shift her behavior is because they disrupt her emotional assumptions. She assumed she could ignore you without consequences. She assumed you would keep chasing no matter how she behaved. She assumed she held the power. But when you set a line she cannot cross, when you stop overgiving, when you stop responding to disrespect, when you pull back from her inconsistency, you break the pattern she relied on. Suddenly, she cannot predict you anymore. And unpredictability creates the emotional tension that reignites attraction. Reason boundaries change everything is because they activate her feminine instincts. Women do not feel safe with a man who allows everything. They feel safe with a man who stands firm, who leads with clarity, who says no when something violates his standards. Boundaries create polarity, the masculine energy of leadership, and the feminine energy of responsiveness. When you set boundaries, you create emotional structure, and women instinctively respond to structure with softness, curiosity, and respect. Boundaries also transform her behavior because they force accountability. When you stop absorbing all the emotional responsibility, she's left facing the reality of her own actions. If she ignores you and you remove your energy, she must confront the imbalance. If she disrespects you and you calmly withdraw, she must confront the consequence. If she becomes inconsistent and you do not chase, she must confront the truth that her behavior does not earn your presence. Boundaries make her responsible for her own effort, something she never had to be before. Another powerful reason boundaries change her treatment is because they elevate your value. A man who walks away from disrespect instantly becomes more attractive than a man who begs for appreciation. Respect grows when access is earned, not assumed. When you stop giving unlimited access to your attention, she begins to realize that your energy was not a cheap resource. It was a privilege, and privileges can be revoked. Finally, boundaries change everything because they redefine the roles. You are no longer the reactive man responding to her emotions. You become the grounded man who sets the emotional tone. She is no longer the one testing your limits. She starts respecting them. She is no longer the one evaluating your worth. She begins proving her own. She is no longer the one deciding the pace. Your boundaries place the pace in your hands. When a man sets boundaries, he does not lose women. He loses the ones who were never meant for him, and the ones who remain treat him with a level of respect, effort, and admiration he never received before. Section 5. The Power Shift. What happens when you stop giving more than you receive? There is a moment in every man's journey where everything changes, not because the woman changes, not because the relationship changes, but because he changes. He stops giving more than he receives. He stops carrying all the emotional weight. He stops being the only one who initiates, checks in, plans, apologizes, adjusts, and sacrifices. And when this moment comes, something powerful, almost instinctive happens. The entire balance of power shifts without you saying a single word. The first shift is internal. When you stop giving more than you receive, you begin to feel a sense of emotional peace you haven't felt in a long time. You stop feeling anxious every time your phone vibrates. You stop replaying conversations in your mind. You stop seeking approval from someone who barely acknowledges your effort. Instead, you start remembering who you were before you allowed someone to drain your energy. You reconnect with the version of yourself who had confidence, direction, purpose, and self-respect. That internal shift becomes the root of all external changes. The next shift is behavioral. You no longer respond immediately. You no longer jump at every request. You no longer over-explain your intentions. You no longer tolerate disrespect disguised as jokes, moods, or excuses. You begin to match energy instead of overextending it. And matching energy is something women feel instantly because it reveals the difference between a man who needs validation and a man who chooses where he invests. Then comes the emotional shift inside her. She begins feeling the loss of your warmth. She notices the absence of your availability. She senses the emotional space between you widening, not because you're being distant, but because you're no longer chasing a connection she never reciprocated. Women have a razor-sharp instinct for shifts in male energy. And when your giving stops, her subconscious mind starts working overtime. She starts wondering, why does he feel different? Did I push too far? Has he lost interest? Is there someone else? These questions mark the beginning of her emotional awakening, the moment she realizes your effort was not guaranteed. Another shift appears through value reversal. When you overgive, she becomes the prize and you become the pursuer. But when you balance the energy or pull yours back completely, you become the rare, disciplined, self-respecting man she cannot easily access. Your attention becomes valuable again. Your presence becomes scarce again. Your energy becomes desirable again. And in female psychology, scarcity creates desire faster than generosity ever could. Then the power shift reaches its peak through self-restoration. You rediscover your focus. Your mind gets quieter. Your ambitions get louder. Your life begins expanding beyond her. You spend more time improving yourself instead of trying to impress her. You invest in your body, your goals, your money, your discipline, your future. And a man who invests in himself becomes a magnet for respect. Finally, the ultimate shift happens. You stop fearing the loss of a woman who never feared losing you. This is where your power becomes unshakable. This is where your standards become non-negotiable. This is where your emotional independence becomes undeniable. And this is where she realizes, often too late, that she misread your worth so badly that you outgrew her without saying a word. When a man stops giving more than he receives, he doesn't become cold. He becomes complete. He becomes the man she respects or the man she regrets losing. At the end of the day, everything comes down to one truth that every man must learn if he wants to live with emotional strength, relational clarity, and unshakable confidence. Respect is not given to the man who tries the hardest, it is given to the man who respects himself first. A woman cannot respect a man who tolerates disrespect. She cannot value a man who undervalues himself. She cannot admire a man who abandons his own standards to keep her comfortable. Women follow the emotional tone a man sets. And if a man's tone is weak, apologetic, desperate, accommodating, or overly available, her respect collapses long before her interest fades. This script, this lesson, this transformation is about reclaiming something bigger than attention. It's about reclaiming your masculine identity. Because the truth is, the moment you stop doing too much for a woman who doesn't respect you is the moment you begin rebuilding the version of yourself you were always meant to be. Not the man who chases, not the man who begs, not the man who loves blindly, but the man who stands tall, who walks with purpose, who chooses wisely, who protects his energy, who honors his standards, and who refuses to shrink himself to be tolerated by someone who never intended to appreciate him. When you stop overgiving, you regain your vision. You no longer chase illusions. You no longer fall for temporary affection. You no longer try to fix a woman who isn't ready to grow. You stop romanticizing potential and start recognizing reality. You begin to see clearly who deserves a seat at your table and who only came to take advantage of your hospitality. You begin to attract women who admire your strength instead of exploiting your softness. You begin to live with an authority that comes not from ego, but from alignment. And here's the truth most men never hear. Walking away from disrespect doesn't make you cold. It makes you powerful. It means you finally understand your worth. It means you refuse to invest in a connection built on disrespect. It means you're willing to lose someone who is willing to lose you. It means you choose peace over chaos, standards over excuses, purpose over temporary attention. You become the man who is no longer afraid of loss. And that is the man women respect the most. Because respect isn't built through gifts, effort, or devotion. Respect is built through boundaries, discipline, consistency, and emotional stability. And when a man lives by those principles, he becomes unforgettable. Not because he's chasing women, but because he walks in a way that makes women chase him. So remember this. The woman who doesn't respect you is not the woman you were meant to impress. She is the woman you were meant to outgrow. She is the lesson, not the destination. She is the chapter, not the ending. She is the reminder of the man you refuse to be again.